Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Tonight's episode. Tonight's episode is titled "The Inner Dialogue's Momentum." The Inner Dialogue's Momentum, and in the subtitle, I've said "Nature's Embrace." So, what do I mean by the inner dialogue's momentum? This can be an idea that could be familiar to some, or it can be unfamiliar. The notion is that when you look at the word, for example, you say psychology, you know, that ology part comes from the word logos, which in ancient Greek times, at the time of its origin, was considered as an inner a guiding voice within humanity and within, like, it was the guidance of, it was in some sense the invisible inner other that was moving, that was the inspiration of many philosophers. So I noticed something very unique, that many philosophers in history, they did not just have a relationship with the world. They did not just look at the world, but they had a relationship with the animation potential of their intelligence. So inner dialogue suggests to how we are creatures that acknowledge the idea of thoughts. And when you really look at thoughts, they are words, and words that contain images. It's all symbology. It's all symbols. The subjective realm is only preserved through attention. This is why in deep sleep, it's kind of like there's nothing there. There's nothing to even have a question about something. Yet our eyes open, our intelligence reactivates. So this inner dialogue, for example, I'll give you one example, Socrates. Now, of course, many people can make claims that these were ancient men and the imagination of the world or the knowledge of the world hadn't expanded. And so they were in some sense like, the first thinkers, so they reacted to the thoughts with pure embrace, with an open embrace. But I'll tell you this, the Socrates is in some sense brought to court in front of the old school, in front of the old men of Athens, and in some sense he's being persecuted. And he gives this profound speech where in that speech he says something of to the magnitude of what did he say? He says, Socrates says, like, I have enemies, new enemies and ancient enemies. So in some sense, certain forces of the world that his consciousness has not yet confronted, yet they come to confront him. So in some sense, he said that, but then he told the old school of the old men of Athens that, as if like from the beginning, he has been in touch with an inner oracle, and this inner oracle has always given him this like subtle moment of authorization, whether he should step somewhere, where he should go somewhere or not. And when he came to court, the reason he entered that room was he was in some sense guided by an inner other. An inner other that is in an intelligence that is all inclusive. So what I mean by that is that, guys, I'm just talking, I'm trying to explain certain historic moments. I'll get to my ideas on this in a second. But so that's the notion. And he said the inner oracle told him to enter, and in some sense there was an authorization, so he felt he could, it's as if he listened to the inner guidances. Just a second, guys. I tend to get these talks with music in the back. I'm just trying to find a kind of ambient sound. All right, here. In some sense, even Friedrich Nietzsche, this German philosopher, I believe he's German. But anyways, he was even inspired by something he would call, it was like a demon to him. It was like some other entity telling him shit, right? And we had, I think it was Descartes, I don't know who, but the concept of the daemon, you know? The whole notion is you are a creature that sees yourself as an individual self, and you're a creature that sees yourself as an individual self with a known boundary and an unknown boundary. There are things you know and things you don't know. Now, when you have an interaction as a mind having a body rather than a body having a mind, as a mind projecting or being in a moment of attention's existence, there's a beauty to nature that in an instant it can flow. There's a brilliance to the mind of the being. In an instant it can open up. And so you got to kind of see that, like, you're not your body, you're not your mind. You're this watcher within. And this watcher within, based on how much he cares for the intelligence's expression, will live for that intelligence. Do you see? So for me, when I became objectively very preferenceless, this happened to me after a certain dream in, I believe it was 2013 or around there. And so after that dream, it was as if I did not have a preference for objective change, because it just changes. Everything I own changes. Do you know? The microphones I speak in change. And so do the ears that listen. But I'm saying, in some sense, there was a relationship outside of the mind to observe an aspect of the mind. So in some sense, you can say the mind is the moment. But I'm saying, okay, so within this moment, there's an objective position. So just acknowledge your physical body right now. Now, also acknowledge this physical body is being acknowledged as a moment of being. You are the whole moment, as far as your senses can stretch their reach. And so you see, you're this moment of existence, which contains within it an objective phenomena, but also through this objectivity, there seems to be a rising subjective phenomena. And subjective phenomena is very unique because we kind of know we can see it there, but we can't see the room it's in. So our thoughts seem to be in an invisible room, in an invisible dimension we can't see. So we observe thoughts. Our species, in some sense, survived by being hunter and gatherers. So we are hunting and gathering no longer that much physically, like as animals would, mainly through a subjective sense. We are being observant of the environment. So spirituality is not just believing like you're some, you know, Photoshop opacity of an image. You're not just this, but you, in some sense, are all that this can be. For me, every moment is divine. Because for me, the sense of divinity is something that it's as if the light hitting your face. But you see, you cannot stay in that light too long. You cannot choose to seek immaterial truths that long. And the world will, in some sense, ground you. There's been moments where, imagine, like in my cellular planes, like, just imagine, just like as a thought experiment right now, just imagine this. Like, I personally have had moments where I've tried to fly beyond the sky of my conception, not the physical sky, beyond the subjective sky. And in those moments, there have come moments where it's as if I reached what I felt the exit of my conceivable existence. And it was while I was alive. It wasn't a near-death experience or something. It was as if like I was right there in front of the ultimate. And so in that experience, in where I felt it's as if I had done all that my materialistic existence required to all the stories of my egos throughout like my timeline. And when I say timeline, like I mean like from the point where I came into existence and from the point that I returned. And the existential origin of my subjective realm is very different in layout than the existential origin of my objective reality. That means when I look in the mirror, when I look at my hands, and when I see scientists saying we evolved with apes, I'm like, fuck yeah. Like in some sense, I can't deny it because I'll be honest, guys. You know how we have to wear jackets to protect our chest? We were four-legged, like we were walking on our like four limbs. That's why our chest was in some sense covered. Do you see? That's why our chest is a vulnerable area. As if when you walk with four legs, like you're as if the vulnerability of the front of the chest is not there, you know. So I'm saying like we evolved, right? So when I looked at the layout of my skeleton, I was like, holy shit, I could totally see how this is animalistic in some sense. But then I wondered, what is the purpose of the animal? And I saw that it was only in the subjective reality that a story could be given. So I'm telling you that the first act of faith that all beings in society have already taken is that they have accepted the language for the world or for that part of the world. And so, in some sense, when words become like art for you, sometimes I write a sentence, like write often, and when I write, when I see that sentence and I read it, like I get an emotion from it, but the emotion is from a sort of architecture of a conceptual relationship, as if how the words extend suggests the weight of the world carried. For me, I believe we're creatures of rhythm. A part of our intelligence is like a wave. You know, it's like just this wave of awareness. And a part of our intelligence is like a sophisticated series of particles trying to be like around one center of gravity. As if the soul's gravity was stronger than everything because it gravitated conceptual, observable, visual existence to itself. As if we are a creature that is not based on our senses, but we gravitated our sensory perception. So for me, just the fact that we are all alive right now is like I'm pretty sure if Sherlock Holmes thought this far, he'd be like, Watson, what the fuck? The shape of your mind is how your body moves in accordance with a position. For me, waking life is positional because I appear individual and to myself. But there are moments in this life that I've experienced where that truth has broken. The truth of a lesser dimension broke in some sense when it saw the illusion of a higher dimension. So this inner dialogue's momentum, I'm going to say something because I've looked at a lot of things, but there was a time where I had, in some sense, a very unique relationship with the intelligence of my moment that in some sense it started me off on a path of creative expression. As if I thought when I was younger, I thought I'm going to be some like tech business guy. But then eventually the waves of life moved me away. They moved me away from the beliefs of the past into the reality of the future. For me, it doesn't matter, like, if as long as human beings don't hurt one another, they should be tolerant to give each other space. What does that mean? That means like you give somebody space to move when you're walking in the park with them. So similarly, you also give space to people because you don't know how their realities are taking it in, you know? Because in some sense, we have to introduce our worlds to one another through the characters we think we are in our stories. There have been moments where I have entertained thought to an instantaneously infinite speed. And there's been moments where my experience of thought has been like as if thought never existed. The world was this pure perfection, like pure natural perfection. I don't know how to tell you. Like that's a quality of this existence. That 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 design is possible. As if when I look at the world, I see the mind of the universe at work. I see the expression of atomic intelligence to a point where it can read a book about itself. We're atoms reading a book about atoms, when we read science textbooks through that universe. So I'm telling you, matter is important to study, but it is not a crown to wear. For me, the outcome of my physical life, like, don't think I'm sitting here being like, yo, it's all known. For me, it's just a sort of humility with the constant relationship, which is the world my mind, in some sense, makes as it responds to the unknown. So me giving this talk, a lot of the reason I'm really drawn to giving these talks, because it's like I'm saying, like, let's try the ultimate improv. Okay, let's try that moment where you actually just pay attention to something and see what unravels. Because our minds are so sophisticated that we don't even understand them. And that's the beautiful thing. Because in ancient traditions, they said two important things. In the Upanishads, there's something where, like, they say the awareness of awareness is unspeakable. Or that which is being aware, it is aware, it is unknowable. And the reason they said that was that in every moment there is the known and the unknown. When you get bored of the known, you go through you move to have different experiences. So my recommendation, for example, for people who they feel they're like stuck in some sort of comfort zone, I'll tell you, first get rid of the idea. Get rid of the idea that, for me, it became an incredible revelation when I realized all the negative values that I saw in myself. When I noticed I'm animating the self in the moment, they shifted. It's as if, like, enlightenment is as if you give, like, the soldier a weapon and he's in the battlefield, but he hasn't in some sense yielded it yet. He hasn't he hasn't brought the weapon out of it. He hasn't unsheathed the weapon, the sword. So you see, so it's as if you get a sort of sharpness and alertness to the clarity of how your presence is in existence, and you begin to see that you are the universe's energetic conception. Do you understand? We have made matter has confused us in such a way that if there is no material continuity, we feel there's going to be subjective discontinuity. I'm telling you, the whole philosophy of Buddhism entertains the idea of the wheel of karma and incarnation. What does that mean? That means the thought of the individual is echoing. It's this non-stop way of just entrance into manifestation. Like, there are people who enter this world and they just wanna. How can I tell you? Like, anytime you feel hostile, that's when the world has not listened to your subjective reality to a point where you have to prove to the world, and at the same time to yourself, who you are. Because sometimes we do actions for others, sometimes we do actions for ourselves. And sometimes when we want to hurt others, we justify the action only for ourselves. We don't even consider looking through the eyes of that other being. But I'm telling you, you're your whole moment. And you're going to see this. You're going to see that the one looking through your eyes is a presence. It's okay to acknowledge it as a presence. And so this presence is a movement. This movement, in some aspect of the moment, translates as dialogue moving at different speeds. And I've experienced different thought streams or consciousness streams. What I mean by that is that, like, I'm sitting here right now and you hear these words that I'm saying, in some sense they come across to me as a stream, as if, like, you've put a cup and you've opened in some sense the valve, and the water has been filled to the brim, but now is endlessly moving out of the brim because the energy source or the origin of the universe is considered energetic. Do you see a creature of? It's as if like prior to, it's like what you think is your physical body is just. It's as if a moment where there's consciousness towards energy, as if there is such a simultaneity, as if the good and the bad were always together. Any person, any moment the person considers just I want to be in a good world, guess what? You are just choosing to believe. You're choosing to not move your subjective attention. So I'll give you an example of this. Right now, as I'm speaking, my subjective attention is right now in this moment on the computer in front of me where I'm speaking to the microphone, and to my physical reality. And at the same time, there is a quality of recognition of your attention in where prior to effort of an individual, there is the effortless existence of the collective truth. And the collective truth is kind of seeing Earth as if Earth was built in heaven, as if the illusion was in the truth. Because what's the point of the enlightenment? What's the point of the concept? You're trying to get to the next level, so which in some sense means it's not just this level. For me, we are passing moments in the mind of the universe, in the attention of the universe. And this attention has unknown roots. I was at this. Okay, I'll be honest about this. I had a rough day at university, and in some sense, this is like years ago. And the way it was that I came and sat by a fountain, and for some reason, I just put my, you know how you can, when you touch your hands together, imagine just connecting your hands, fingertips together. So I sat with my hands like this, just in front of this fountain, and it was becoming sunset, and I was just hopelessly, nullified subjectively to a neutrality, as if my interest had evaporated. And so as I was there, suddenly I began getting thoughts, but I could notice these thoughts were moving in my awareness faster than I normally think. So imagine I'm sitting there by the fountain, silent, looking at the water in my fingers, something like that, and in my breathing, in my exhalation, I'm beginning to hear a sort of a speed of an inner dialogue that's not my normal thinking speed. Okay? So when that happens, in every exhalation, it becomes as I'm exhaling, my ears are just listening from the start. And so it's in some sense, the mind animated through the rhythms of the breath, a sort of inner dialogue. And this inner dialogue was moving faster than how normally thoughts are. Because how you speak, how you experience thoughts is, again, the movement of linguistic reality in your mind. So pretty much language moving at different speeds. So I experienced a speed of the movement of thoughts in my experience that was it was much faster. That's all I could say. I knew that it wasn't me. And I remember that in that moment, it was what felt to me was how can I tell you? It felt like what felt to me was 10 minutes, was 30 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, I just was introduced to these concepts that weren't in my conscious mind. And just as I'm sitting there, through this observance of the speed of these thoughts passing, and it's as if I'm just watching these thoughts, and as I'm watching these thoughts, how can I tell you, I was directed to a page in a book on a shelf that I hadn't opened. The book was so new, I hadn't opened. Because sometimes I go to a bookstore and buy books intuitively. Like I don't even think. I just go there and just by feeling I just know which book to pick. You know, kind of with the same I guess Native American tracking system of intuition in the wilderness. I go and I remember it was something about channeling space. This idea. And so I was being introduced how like my conscious attention, even though it exists primarily and most immediately in a physical reality, in regards to my subjective reality, I am in many rooms at once. As if you asked me if I remember my like, earlier birthdays and and the most recent birthday I've had, and it's as if like those memories are accessible with the whim of an emotion within me, with a whim of a directed curiosity. So that became a sort of confirmation for me to study the unknown, as if I found something more interesting than my world. The curiosity to know the origin, and the realization of the empty, and then the realization of emptiness's purpose to be fulfilled. And the full reality's purpose is to remember emptiness. You see, life is very beautiful because it is an opportunity. It is an opportunity of self-expression, influential to within a collective system. Our civilization is a system of advancement, and so people, because they are not being taught, because they are not being given mirrors powerful enough to remind them that behind their eyes is a vision that can align, as if you can see a way of life being that nobody else is seeing, and run to the world and share it. You can be like Elon Musk, you know. For me, Elon Musk, I have one thing to say to him, and that's like, go further, Elon, you Musk. But the whole notion is that once the subjective dimension becomes active, creativity becomes not more like you got to think of something. It becomes a ceremony of an appreciation of a moment's art, of the beauty of the moment. And there is beauty, there's many types. There's elusive beauty. There's beauty fueled by the future or the past. That beauty is corrupt, but it's beautiful. It's as if like that you see it in the movie Couple, like the guy falls in love with how beautiful the girl physically is, and then later on realizes the girl's whole intention was to destroy like his life or something. So I'm telling you that it's as if like there's a beauty in the surface, but there's a darkness within, and that darkness is there because the being, the most immediate being, has not brought a conscious flashlight in the depth, in the deep abyss, pitch blackness of the depth of their mind, and they have not explored who they really are, you know, because a belief is not enough. A belief is just a name tag. It's like somebody comes and tells me I believe this and I believe that. I'll be like, okay, okay, like it's like you're putting stickers on your forehead. Okay, you're blocking your third eye with a sticker of an ideology. And so, of course, the third eye is not a physical eye. It's just how you are. The subjective awareness is present, active. It's a subtle awareness. And so the personality for me has become a work of art every day. And when I say the personality, I mean like how I experience myself as a person has become really based on the attention, where my attention goes, and how much my attention chooses to go within or go without. If I go without, that means for example, external engagement, that's when, like, I in some sense have to put the blindfold and run into the forest of civilization. That means I have no idea of what's gonna happen, but I'm going to explore kind of mentality, you know, like an external exploration. But an inner exploration doesn't need you to change. Like, you could sit on a park bench and in an instant have an inner exploration, a realization of the coagulation of all your beliefs together again anew, as if your self-awareness, your self-inquiry, and your honest vision is some sense originating a tornado that is shuffling all the beliefs of the past and the future. Do you believe the future is like what we think is the future most of the time is actually the past's attempt to be more than itself? For me, ideas can in some sense be infinite illusions, but they at the same time are powerful tools. As if, like, after Thor defeated all his enemies with, his hammer, Thor's hammer, you know, it's like, some guy came to Thor and said, "Hey man, I need to, put a pin on my wall. Can I use your hammer?" And the guy's decency and simplicity was like worthy for the gods, to have him wield that hammer. So I'm saying, for example, like, an incredible tool can be used for a simple moment. I feel that it's kind of like one's knowledge is something that requires to be cultivated through external engagement and internal engagement, in the sense that you're not just being a physically moving creature throughout the day, but throughout the day you have moments also where you just sit still and silent and just observe your moment and being like, okay, what kind of moment is being presented? And who and how are my emotions creating my own self-identity? Because I'll tell you, there have been moments where I've experienced, like, my anger made me not see my blind spot, where my rage made just accepted, like, an openness to destroy any subjective reality. This is like in my youth when I would get angry. Like, I like, as a person, of course, when you get angry at someone, you say something about them to them, with intensity, right? So, like, I remember I would, in some sense, like, I'll tell you this: it's, you can throw the spear of knowledge, and it can break the sky of the unknown, or the spear can break sometimes. But when your attention gets introduced to a sort of multidimensional relationship of itself, it then utilizes that in aspects of its life, from being one individual in a world. The moment this individual sees other individuals, its mind updates on the notion of self. This is why great warriors, after battles, they would just sit still and silent and just try to take it all in, try to see how that experience was going to mean to them something. And because we're temporary creatures, it's easy to see ourselves as worthless. However, the worth is in the potential. That's just pretty much the human ability. The human ability is not like super strength and an ability to fly or something. It's the ability to keep continuing even though the odds seem against us. It is the spark of hope. So when you find this spark of hope within you, you realize you also deserve. Like, after you've experienced, like, a chaotic experience of life, just acknowledge within yourself that you also deserve to experience the opposite. It's as if you've been in this part of the museum, now let's go see the other part, right? And that's kind of like the ebbs and flows of materialistic manifest existence. I find in its subjective game. It's so powerful, these things, because language has given us an ability to just define different things. So for me, in some sense, I find myself a temporary being, a temporary creature, But I also find that the universe is looking through my eyes, and the universe is more unknown than known. So in some sense, for me, what comes across to be me is just an experience. We are pure moments of attentive experience. And as the mind settles, your imagination becomes very powerful and it begins gaining speed the moment your self-worth increases, your self-value. So I'll tell you, there's authors that see the world, right? Every author is seeing the world. Now, how the laws of that world appear in that author's story is a suggestion of how they have found the world to make sense, how they have extracted a sort of conceptual meaning from reality. So I'm saying the philosophies of the author is very evident in how the world of that author, let's say science fiction author or fiction author or whatever, you know, it's as if it's the philosophy of the author, the philosophy of the God of that literal universe on in that book can be seen in the way the world works. Words are like the fingertips that are pointing at the stars, and some people are just lost looking at the fingertip, and some people are like, holy shit, language is pointing towards a higher presence of intelligence. And when I say higher, not hierarchically, I say higher in the sense that thoughts, you realize you're not your thoughts, and you realize you're also not your emotions, but that comes later. And when you realize you're not your thoughts, what occurs is that you see you're the stage for the presence of any thought. Do you see you're kind of studying the brush that your attention is holding as an intelligent expression? It's very easy to be a solipsist. A person who, if I believe I'm correct on this, but a person who believes it has always been just their own world. For me, it's as if prior to that, before language, I just remember as a kid a moment pre-thought. And I remember how thought entered my experience. And thoughts would animate when I would look at something, or sometimes when I would just be still and just look at things and there I would not get any thoughts, but suddenly in my stillness I would get this, you could say, like, stream of just patterns of various thoughts in a certain chronological order. And I considered that as the waves of as if like they were the winds of the mind of God. No, I mean I didn't say that extremely. What I'm telling you, like for me, it was like creativity has always been like a wave you need to catch. It requires an attentiveness and it requires an incredible compassion and care for the world that idea exists in to bring that idea forth. So, a Zen master once suggested that your relationship with your thoughts can be like how the leaves of a tree change through the seasons. The thought of you as it moves through the environment throughout the day, based on what it is seeing and what is happening, changes its alignment of how it should sort of exist. And that interchange of alignment of existence is pretty much the, would you say substratum? Substratum? Oh my God, substratum. It could be like the sub, uh, like the, it could be the inner blueprint of evolution and attention's struggle to continue being. You know, life is kind of like this. It's not that you gotta like find meaning and truth. Pretty much all I'm just saying with these Mr. Within talks, guys, here, like this is it. You just realize you've lived a life and that life has brought you to a certain moment and a certain agreement to how the world is. Now also realize you don't need to change. You don't need to change who you are. Just realize, just observe in that moment a view where you, how can I tell you? It's like once you reach the empty piece of paper, you take the brush and you see the infinite opportunity of different ways you can move the brush on the paper. As if the rhythm of your hand suggests the painting that will come to manifestation. So the rhythm and how the whole moment is engaged, and when more aspects of your moment engage with something, creativity gets like your inspiration gets fast speed. And so what happens is it's like this, guys. It's like that inner dialogue, which is in words, that inner dialogue, those words speed up, and they speed up to a point where it's as if you're just seeing words and putting images in, words and putting images in. So imagine right now you just saw subtitles, but these subtitles were endlessly horizontally, as if like this endlessly horizontal TV, and the subtitles were just endlessly going. You see? So it's as if like these subtitles begin moving at such a fast speed that before you can, your ego can, the idea of yourself can relate to it, it has changed. Do you see? And so in the speed of thought, and as thoughts gain momentum, because thoughts are like subjective particles in some sense, and they can't be seen that way. And so as these subjective particles begin gaining a momentum, as they begin orbiting around the individual, as if like certain elemental forces through the attention of the witness are being kind of given a movement. So, so what I'm saying is like, as you see your thoughts speed, and when you can't follow their speed, you suddenly kind of let go of your parachute. And so that's when you open up your intuition, the realm of your intuition, your senses. But at the same time, you in some sense structure and ground yourself in your belief. As if most of the technology that's helping lift off spaceships into the sky is occurring on Earth. It's not occurring from outer space. You see? I'm not saying it's not occurring in outer space as if there isn't satellites or space. What do you call it? Space headquarters or something. Not headquarters. Oh God, what is it called? Anyways, what I'm trying to say is that thoughts, as they gain momentum, become a moving image. And that moving image begins to allow this attention outside the image of this subjective thought, like as if thoughts was a painting somehow. Let's say it's a painting you can't see in a room, you can't see, but there's a painting there. Like the shape of the thought. Okay, so when you see that shape of the thought, when I say thoughts move at a fast speed, as if like just like how that Zen master said, the thoughts are like leaves, and as the seasons change, as there's this cyclical forwardness of manifestation, through that, it's as if there is no way of holding on to things, as if the world is changing before our beliefs can justify it. So the world is quicker than us. We must understand this in regards to changing. And so we have to adjust. We as creatures tend to adjust. But once you have attained a sort of peaceful environment, outer environment, and you just and the easiest way to find peace is the simplest way. And the simplest way is the instantaneous way. Is to live in a world where peace was never forgotten. Where the potential was never lost. As they turn into sort of movies, the speed of thought, they will become a movie where then the images, as if that movie is moving at such a fast speed, where then you pass the skies of abstraction. As a pilot of consciousness, you navigate your consciousness through the subjective realm beyond the skies of abstraction and duality. So in other words, you reach the edge of the subjective realm, your subjective bubble, that invisible. You open the door of the invisible room by realizing the segmentation was a flaw. as if we were just looking at the branches of a tree, not considering one trunk is holding them all. And so your fingertips preach the message of your palm. Our individual existence echoes the vision of a collective presence. So that's what I'm kind of saying. You just realize you observe a thought. You become aware of it, because that's how we can say we get new thoughts. Like, you didn't know something, suddenly you know something. That bubble of knowledge around you has just expanded due to you looking at the design of the knowledge and seeing the limitations. This is why many inventors have been given a helping hand from the universal moment. The universal moment is when all the bubbles, all the subjective bubbles of people break, and there comes this ultimate objective realization. And in the acceptance of the ultimate objective realization, there comes the ultimate subjective realization. And the ultimate subjective realization is your pure presence. You pretty much come to a moment where you can draw endlessly, and your attention can simulate a subtle world and endlessly generate worlds within it. And I say that in a sense where I'm translating that from a geometrical expression where that can fractally move in your imagination in some sense. As if I tell you right now, imagine a circle, like as if imagine like with black like ink, like that Zen masters would use, you know, in their calligraphy, like in Zen calligraphy, like with the same ink, imagine like a circle. You draw a circle on the wall beside you or wherever you are. Just imagine a circle on the ground or wherever. You see, your mind can imagine that. Now, imagine endless circles. Like one circle, and then there's another circle, and endlessly you're trying to see the center point of this fractal kind of moving, you know, concentric pattern. As if horizontally, yes, it's like an onion style kind of multidimensionality, but in some sense, vertically, it's a kind of 3D. It's like a tunnel. It's a tunnel. It's as if your experience is tunneling through manifestation, and in certain moments of it is choosing to claim a shape. So as you study your mind, you also uncover, you discover how your true nature, it just responds to things. And then you just live a life where the weight of ignorance is not there, because you have come to your simple self. Your simple self, where it's as if sometimes the simplest people can see the greatest solutions to complexity. And again, as we see evident in today's current society, the most complex people see new ways to make things simple. Like, for example, Silicon Valley. For me, we're not just 8 billion bodies here, we're 8 billion minds. Once you find a world that you can live in that's better, like, how can I say it? It's as if, like, just like how Michelangelo saw the angel in the stone and set it free, and that's his quote, like, he saw the angel in the stone and set it free. So, like, he saw something with no meaning and sculpted experientially meaning out of it. And so I'm saying, do this with your moment and study your moment in self. There's a quote from Shri Nisargadatta Maharaj, this sage who he was a cigarette salesman, believe it or not, in India, and he went to like this holy guru, but like a legit one. And the holy guru, he just got to see him for one day, and the guru just told him, in every moment, study yourself. Study the self. He didn't say even yourself, study the self. And so this guy goes, and the guru does a mahasamadhi, which is consciously leaves his body through a sort of meditation or meditative practice. And or pretty much it's a certain way of using your attention prior to physical, like your objective transition. The inner dialogue's momentum becomes the response of the universal sector to your expression. So how you stand in the moment suggests how the world stands for you or not. I have walked in states of being where I just saw life, like in some sense, as if karmically I had a bad odor. And there, as if there, I have walked in certain moments where there's been like an incredible enlivenment, like as if I saw the spirit of peace move through nature. I don't know how else to explain it. um, I kind of lost track of where I was going previously, but I guess I'll lead us here. Um, there's a quote from Jonathan Stewart that says, "Vision is the art of seeing the invisible." And in your life right now, wherever you are, you have an artistic opportunity. This artistic opportunity is just to see what those around you are not seeing. And it has to be an exploration of your attention, and you have to honestly want to. Uh, it's as if once you've been in a room too long, you're just like, okay, let's see. And in that openness to the unknown, your knowledge can reshape, and it usually does automatically, like in your subconscious, in your subtler ways of existing consciously. So, anyways, I hope this talk served you. I'll say one more thing. The more you pay attention to a material truth, the less you care about matter. The more you pay attention to a materialistic truth, the less you care about the material. So, what I mean by that is your attention is dictating how the unknown opens up to you. And for me, I believe that the subjective ability and just like the imagination of human beings, or what we call the phenomenon of imagination, that is an opportunity. That is like, it shouldn't be limited by just matter. It's like, it's like your body telling your mind what to do, you know? Within yourself, all answers arise. And so rise, man.